So yeah, should we get into this?
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
curious to hear what your take on the stimulus is. We've been covering closely all over,
oh, I'm sure. Yeah,
yeah,
I,
give me your state of play, especially the stuff beforehand. I'm curious
I
what.
mean, yeah, Trump threw a pretty big wrench in it the other day, and I mean, we don't have that video, I don't think either, but it's a pretty funny one.
Oh, I have it.
Um,
Yeah, I'll have
but
it here.
I mean, let me just set the stage. And I know nobody listened to this show has any doubts about the real difficulty that people are facing in this country. But sometimes quantifying this like really helps out. We found out again that despite all this like talk about how there's going to be this big surge in holiday spending, we didn't see that. Commerce Department found that personal income fell in November. Unemployment is still up. 869,000 people filed for new claims for state jobless benefits. Another 400,000 people filed for pandemic unemployment assistance. And we get this response, this supposed stimulus bill from the Democratic Party and the Republicans. That honestly was a joke. $600 payment to people who we got $1,200 when cases were way lower, when the economic situation was not even close to as bad as it is today. And now when it's almost 5 times as bad, significant more deaths, more and more people facing eviction. Offering people $600 is a joke. But one thing that they didn't skimp on was their giveaway to the rich. You got to understand that in this bill, there was another huge giveaway to rich people, specifically in the form of tax breaks. $200 billion in tax breaks to rich people. So basically, all these people who got that PPP money, those loans that as long as they use part of it to pay people's salaries, they would get forgiven. But they could use it for all sorts of other things too, as long as they were just using part of it to pay for people's salaries. The government will forgive those loans. Well, now in this new bill, those rich people, those businesses will actually be able to write all of those loans off on their taxes. So all of that money, remember, this is the kind of money that somebody like Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady with his insane supplement company, Alex Jones style brain pills company, got $1 million PPP loan. Like that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the people who are getting this kind of loan. Now those people will be able to write the payments that they made out and the things that they bought with that money off on their taxes, which is basically double dipping, and means that they're going to have a much smaller tax bill at the end of the year. When again, you're getting nothing. You're like in the grand scheme of things, $1,800 is nothing. It's a complete joke. Only $25 billion in rental assistance. That's at a time when we have 15 million people facing eviction. Ending the paid COVID sick leave mandate. Yeah. And, the fact that they're giving these rich people basically, again, this other $200 billion in tax stimulus when they were only willing to spend $166 billion for people in checks, I think really shows exactly the kind of situation that we are in.
Yeah, it's depressing, like to see the certain reporters be like, well, at least they got certain like trying to sell that version of the bill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as if the reality is, you shouldn't expect much from complete and total vampires that don't care about your livelihood or the livelihood of anybody you love and would, gladly sleep or sleep easily, ruining that.
Yeah.
And not doing anything that they could, like literally this change and how quickly Pelosi and Schumer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we should play the Trump clip first so we can kind of set the table for that.
Yeah, so as people, I'm sure, no doubt, late yesterday, Donald Trump threw a wrench in that whole plan. Everyone thought this was a set, done deal, this bad deal, but they thought it was a done one. Trump at the last minute, puts out this statement here, if you have it ready.
Yeah, we'll pick it up kind of in the middle here.
Yeah, because he rambles. Actually, I'm impressed by his ability to just read that teleprompter for like 3 minutes before he finally gets to the point.
Which will allow the owners to obtain financing and get their restaurants back in condition. Congress can terminate it at a much later date, but 2 years is not acceptable. It's not enough. Congress found plenty of money for foreign countries, lobbyists, and special interests while sending the bare minimum to the American people who need it. It wasn't their fault. It was China's fault.
Jesus Christ.
I am asking Congress to amend this bill and increase the ridiculously low $600 to $2,000 or $4,000 for a couple. I'm also asking Congress to immediately get rid of the wasteful and unnecessary items.
Yeah, blah, blah. So we can forget that part, which Pelosi wisely is in the statement. She's just, everyone's just focusing on the $2,000 ask because who gives a shit about what, frankly, like Trump wants a lot of that waste in there. The waste he thinks of as waste is not the waste.
Yeah, nothing about the Space Force. And again, like, I know there's all these people like, well, actually, this is the omnibus, NDAA that they're talking about. It's like, yes, but these are tied together. And like, I'm not defending Trump's nonsense, but like, look, they are political decisions being made to tie all this stuff together into one big ass 5,000
you're
plus
considering
word
budget that wasn't previously politicized to the degree it should have been, where you're giving $500 million to Israel during the middle of this. Like,
yeah.
I mean, but that is something people should notice, and it should not be the job of journalists to train them not to notice something like that with where we're putting our economic priorities.
I think that's exactly the way to frame it. But anyways, what Donald Trump does here is, say that he won't sign this bill unless they up the payments. And then again, all this kind of wild Trump stuff. And like, let's take this seriously. Donald Trump says a lot of like, who knows what the hell's going on there? Like, honestly, like I think that there is even like a kind of like personal judgment that you can make about Donald Trump. He's 100% the kind of guy who's pissed and spoiled, and would just, want to create a big spectacle at the end of his term so he can do one last thing and not follow through, right? Just so that people can say like, well, Donald Trump actually tried so hard to get this for us and we ended up not getting anything. Like, I understand people are making that argument. I don't think that's outlandish because Donald Trump is a pig and doesn't care about you. Right. But the fact is, and this is something that David Sirota has been pointing out, that what this reveals is that Joe Biden and the Democratic leadership had an opportunity that they didn't go forward enough with, right? They had an opportunity that Trump actually has been out saying that he thinks that payments should be much bigger for a very long time. And they didn't lean into that into their negotiations with the Republicans.
Yeah, that's the thing with Pelosi. Like, and look, you need a political line, but to see through it, Pelosi acting as if the Republicans just wouldn't tell us what Trump really wanted, and they were lying that he was only like $600. No, you knew exactly. You didn't want to know about the $2,000. You wanted to ignore that because, that's the thing.
And Trump was tweeting about that stuff. I mean, it's nonsensical, but he was out there on Twitter saying that he thought that the payment should be bigger.
Go home.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, again, it's just like, it's a convenient excuse. And look, I will say this, credit where it's due. We did see Nancy Pelosi come out with the statement on Twitter saying we're ready to do this.
Uncharacteristically so.
Yeah, and I think that's the correct move, no doubt about it, and I hope that it works out. I really do. But again, as David Sirota, who's been really good this past couple of days, covering this, this negotiation, made the point is that it could be very likely that she is trying to hedge her bets here. One, don't forget that she pushed a deal earlier that had no checks. So as much as they might want to, make this about like the Republicans, which absolutely it is about the Republicans, this has not been an issue that they have been really committed on fighting on. It's something that they say like, yes, we would like this in a perfect world, but that's what you always get with centrist liberals. Like, oh, in a perfect world, we could have a better healthcare system. In a perfect world, we could have a higher minimum wage, right? But it's always, they always go into a negotiation from a weaker position, right? So they were already going to accept a deal that had no checks. And as David Sirota points out, when she said that they'll put this out for unanimous consent, people should understand that that's a process that gives any single member of the House the ability to raise an objection and thusly block it, right? So this means that, you put the entire fate of getting this, these checks out there to the Republican Party, right? The 2020 GOP, you put it out there when the fact is that like people, that the vast majority of politicians worth their salt understand that you actually don't want to be the one denying people their checks. But when you allow it to be just one person having to, to stop it versus doing something with which David Dayen has written about where they could suspend the rules, and which would mean that you would actually have to have 140 members of the GOP buck Donald Trump and the orders from Donald Trump, right? You're creating a situation, an opportunity for the GOP, one member of the GOP to block these checks. And again, remember that these people were prepared, the Democratic Party were prepared to put out a deal earlier that had no checks coming to you. So again, I hope that they have the capacity to push for this, and I hope that they follow through with it. But I can already see, them preparing themselves to back away, which again would be disastrous.
The voice vote, yeah, that's where we're at now. Is the voice vote is not enough, and that's where Pelosi wants to leave it, because all either of these people care about is Georgia and winning those races. So that's the only reason we've lucked into this leverage again in the first place, is because those two candidates, the Republicans, are getting creamed because Ossoff found a way to say like $1,200, and McConnell's like, oh well, better do something about that. Otherwise, there'd be no talk, I don't think, of any kind of relief. And yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get my hopes up, but like at least the way that the other bad signal before I get optimistic. I mean, look, the only optimistic thing I have to say is it was uncharacteristic of Pelosi to jump on an opportunity so quickly like that, and like. I mean, it's just nice. It's like seeing somebody field a grounder. Good job. But yeah, I mean, you haven't seen anything out of Kamala or Joe as far as I know. And maybe something recently happened, but they've been silent on it. And K-Hive's all about, Kamala originally co-sponsored the $2,000 bill. Where's she at now? Now's where we need her to say something. She could make a lot of difference if she starts agitating for this. But they're going to do what Democrats always do, which is like see what the fallout is, and it ends up falling on you.
See what the fallout is and provide yourself with enough, plausible deniability, right? To be able to say that it was the Republicans and that's why they like moves. Like that's why they, we always hear about how great Nancy Pelosi is. It's like a parliamentarian, right? Like that's the argument for why she needs to be speaker,
about that.
Right? And the thing is, like, I actually think that I think that is true, but she's a good parliamentarian in her, like, especially in her ability to make sure that, that she can set up the stage for the best optics for the Democratic Party without having to get the results. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. And, again, I hope that they can figure this out because we desperately need it. And honestly, there's a part of me that just like has to put like my political, all the kind of, the kind of deep thinking, views of politics and just like on a human level, it actually does drive me insane. And I just honestly, there's a part of me deep down, like I understand why they're so bad at providing for people. I understand why our government is so bad at providing for people, but there's a part of me deep down that's just like, how the hell are we sitting here, a couple days before Christmas and we still haven't gotten any real stimulus for people? How are we sitting here a couple days before Christmas with 15 million facing down, an eviction moratorium? Again, not rent relief, right? Not covering people's rents, right? An eviction moratorium. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. And it's inhumane that we're sitting here in this moment of time with this on the table. But this is the political reality that we're in. And that's why, we're trying to do as much as we can to fundamentally change it. But look, don't stand these people and don't have any false hopes that this Democratic Party is going to come in and save the day at the end of the day, because they won't. The only thing that's going to be able to save us is ourselves, making, serious politics and making sure that we're no longer accepting the excuses that we get from liberals who will just betray us.
Yeah. I mean, obviously if you think that Pelosi wants to kill everything, she's doing a great job of, grave digging democracy really, as much as McConnell has, with like squandering this so-called resistance. I mean, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot else to say.
I think what we should do is move on, to this next little segment, because it's also important to see what's ahead of us, right? So we've seen Donald Trump play a role in these negotiations, but where's Joe Biden, right? What should we be looking forward to, very soon when he, becomes the next president? And the reality is, it's not looking good, y'all. It's not looking good at all. Joe Biden is somebody who has like a real deep fetish for austerity, a real deep fetish for symbolic action. That's why he loves talking about the mask all the time, but he doesn't want it, or how he believes science, but how you don't actually get a lot of very firm policies from him about how he's going to help everyday people.
But look at commercials. You got to see, see a lot of biracial families and Cheerios now. And, that's something we didn't see growing up.
And honestly, that leaked Zoom meeting that we got with him was a perfect encapsulation of his politics. And I don't know if you have this from the Daily Poster, Matt, the David Sirota piece. this is a really good encapsulation of what we have to look forward to with Joe Biden, is because it does seem from some of the early reporting that we're getting that Joe Biden actually was fairly involved in these negotiations behind the scenes, but not, in my opinion, in a positive way. So if you just scroll down, I have the text in front of me that I can read. But this is from the New York Times, that buried deep in a New York Times report that David Sirota cites here. And it was a really good analysis that he has about the role that Joe Biden played in these negotiations. With Republican and Democratic leaders in the House and Senate far apart on how much they were willing to accept in new pandemic spending, Mr. Biden on December 2nd threw his support behind the $900 billion bill being pushed by the centrist group. The total was less than half of the $2 trillion that Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, had been insisting on.
They're to the left of the centrist group, just for people.
Yeah, that's a good point. If Pelosi and Chuck Schumer representing the left wing, you are in big trouble, right? And this is the really important nugget right here. Mr. Biden's move was not without risks. If it had failed to affect the discussion, the president-elect risked looking powerless to move Congress before he had taken the oath of office. But members of both parties said his intervention was constructive and gave Democrats confidence to pull back on their demands. Let that sink in for a second. When we talk about how inadequate this bill was, when we talk, when you hear all these excuses from Pelosi and from Democratic members of Congress who say we tried to do something different, but they wouldn't budge. Remember that it was Joe Biden, not any kind of final calculus. It was Joe Biden, understanding that they would not be attacked by Joe Biden, and Joe Biden wouldn't put any pressure on them to do not even the bare minimum, to do below any kind of standard that you would have, which this bill is, right? Remember that that's the situation that we're in. And I'd like to just remind everybody that this is what we're going to be facing with Joe Biden. All of this kind of fantasy that we're going to be able to push Joe Biden left is just that. It's a fantasy. This is somebody who has told us who he is multiple times for decades, right? And especially over the past year, nothing will fundamentally change. If a bill passed, Medicare for all passed through both houses of Congress, I would veto it. That's the kind of person that we are up against right now. And this is a horrible example of that. And it's very worrying that, once we go into January, because I'm very scared that we can find, that we'll be able to find some way to lower the spread of COVID. And then there will be less pressure on Congress to deal with this economic devastation. Because again, remember that billionaires in this country, since the COVID crisis has started, increased their total wealth by $1 trillion. We're going to be, when this COVID stuff is over, we're going to be entering into a more unequal world than we were living in 2020, right? In January 2020. And that world was already unsustainably unequal, right? And unfortunately, Joe Biden is somebody who represents the worst form of austerity politics. And I just want to remind people, if you have this video, unless you had something.
One quick thing, just on the on that, gave the confidence for what was it? Gave them the confidence to pull back on their demands.
Yeah.
That's definitely Joe Biden, but even deeper, this is the Democratic leadership, right? So here's this from this is a tweet I remembered from this summer. When basketball players were starting to strike over the George Floyd stuff. And this is Derica Purnell said, the original quote tweet says, LeBron James led a small group of players who sought advice of Barack Obama on Wednesday, and the former president offered them guidance to continue playing with a plan of action. And Derica says, President Obama told black NBA players striking for racial justice to keep playing ball. And so, I mean, look, I don't want to put... that's the Democratic Party. That's we got our eyes on the polls, on polling that you can't even see, and we know we're going to take care of it. And meanwhile, you're getting evicted. So yeah, it's pretty frustrating.
It's absolutely horrific. And I just wanted to sort of close this segment off with Bernie Sanders being quite adamant and quite timely in his warnings to the American people about what they were facing with Joe Biden. And just remind people that, Bernie warned us, right? None of this should come to any of us as a surprise. Bernie was very adamant about the kind of politician that Joe Biden was.
Do you remember the Hillary told us stuff that happened?
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, yeah, that's what we need to go with here.
Let me ask you a question, Joe.
Yeah.
You're right here with me.
Yeah.
Have you been on the floor of the Senate? You were in the Senate for a few years.
Yeah.
Time and time again, talking about the necessity, with pride, about cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, cutting veterans programs.
No.
You never said that.
No.
When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government.
Look, here's the deal.
You're an honest guy. Why don't you just tell the truth here? We all make mistakes.
I am telling the truth.
And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time.
Joe, let me repeat it again. I want you just to be straight with the American people. I am saying that you have been on the floor of the Senate time and time again talking about the need to cut Social Security, Medicare, and veterans programs. Is that true or is that
No,
not
it's
true?
not true.
That is not true?
That is not true.
I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government.
Everything was on the table. I did not support any of those cuts in Social Security or in veterans benefits.
Whoa. Everything was on the table. All right, you're right. You just said it, including, in your judgment, cuts to Social Security and veterans.
In order to get the kinds of changes we need on other things related.
Yeah.
No, then
but
you
it
just-
didn't. But we did not cut it.
I know,
did not
because
vote for
people
it.
like me helped stop that. All that I would
Hell
say,
yeah.
the American people, go to YouTube. It's all over the place. Joe said
Go to
it.
YouTube.
My favorite website, if you heard of it.
Go to YouTube, Left Reckoning. No, I mean, I just wanted to, one, go back to kind of fonder memories and just to say there's been a lot of talks about strategy, especially on, the large scale, on the congressional level for the left. And I will say this, that what Bernie Sanders was doing in that moment is exactly the kind of energy that we have to be bringing into this next Congress, into this next government, right? Making it very clear to people that that if they think that there's this kind of like unity between people like AOC and Nancy Pelosi, they are mistaken. Like, these people are our political enemies and we are struggling against them. And one thing I think is really important that needs to start happening is making sure that our movement is seen on a national level, not just with people who follow politics closely. They need to start seeing left-wing politicians as something distinctly different from any kind of typical member of the Democratic Party, because what we are going to see the next few years from Joe Biden is going to be a full-on onslaught into these kind of programs, into workers' protections, right? And if we don't start articulating ourselves as fundamentally different, you're going to either see a backlash that will be dangerous and will be utilized by the right wing, or a depression, right? Or like a political depression of like nothing, will fundamentally change. What Joe Biden's fundamental politics are about depressing these social movements. We are at a time when a lot of people are demanding things that are different. These like Black Lives Matter protests that we saw over the, during a pandemic, right? We're a reaction, one, to the commitment that people are saying enough is enough. We're not going to live in this kind of racist country. We're not going to live in a country where police just can murder people with impunity. Right? Fundamentally, yes. But there was also, I think, a really deep demand too, that people are saying, I'm fed up with this entire thing, right? That there's a lot of energy and people are prepared to do something different. And we have to build those kind of avenues that can do them. But you have to be able to build the kind of platform and articulate a political vision that not only says this is wrong, but that we can do something better.
Yeah, I agree. And to the extent, and we don't want to wade too deeply into the strategy stuff, but I mean, I just want to say on Pelosi specifically, and it's different when I think you have the Speaker of the House could be Kevin McCarthy and whatever. But in terms of like the threat that has been laid over progressives' head that, hey, this might be a chance for Hakeem Jeffries to get in instead. So don't you want Pelosi? Like, I don't think that's good enough for the squad to support Pelosi.
No.
And, I know Jeffries is super horrible. Like, now he's saying the entire socialist left is gentrifiers moving into areas edging out.
It's incredible, man.
For communities of color. And I get he's a problem, but Pelosi is a major problem as well. And so like I think the general, like, she needs to go, and I do think she needs to not they I agree 100%. And like, if there were an opportunity for a break for the squad to get to a level where they were strong enough, like that needs to happen at some point, because I mean Pelosi's horrible.
I definitely agree with that, but I'm telling people, and I've been saying this for a really long time, like the most important thing that we have in front of us right now is like, so like, I'm not trying to be like gloomy about these things either. It's like, look, the people in power are extremely bad, but there are people all across this country trying to fight and do something different. And what we have to do is to start building organizations. Like, action is great, and building an organization is action. I don't want to draw a line in between those two things, but you need to have things that have staying power, right? You need to have organizations that have the ability to be fighting on like the Green New Deal, fighting on defund the police, fighting on Medicare for all these kind of things. And if we don't start trying to capture, get people to start thinking of themselves as a class, as part of organizations, then all we're going to have is just people doing individual actions. And like, that can change a lot. Don't get me wrong, right? I'm not trying to depress anybody, but you have to have strong political organizations to fundamentally change the system, because it's completely rotten. And our opponents have very strong organizations, and they like it when we are completely fractured and acting as individuals or small groups as we are right now. And we need to have organizations, I'm talking like political parties, unions, things of that nature, that can like demand, for example, that the member, like somebody like AOC or members of the squad, do certain things, right? Because all we have right now is like our ability to sort of like yell at them or get their attention. Like, we need people in power who are members of organizations too. And I know AOC's, DSA, but I'm telling you right now, nobody in the DSA has the power to censure AOC, right? And until we start to build those kind of movements, we're going to always sort of, be in a difficult place. And we could build those organizations, and you can build them with the speed that we need to match this moment. But like, that's where we need to be really focusing a lot of our time.